The interstellar vessel Astral Seeker drifted silently through the void, its plasma engines reduced to a faint blue glow. Captain Vex stood on the command deck, his forearms crossed tightly against his thorax, mandibles clicking with agitation. The ship's quantum drive had failed 3 cycles ago, leaving them stranded in the empty region between the Orion and Perseus arms of the galaxy. "Status report," Vex demanded, compound eyes reflecting the emergency lighting that bathed the bridge in crimson. First Officer Mira, her translucent skin shimmering with stress pigments, gestured toward the holographic display. "The quantum matrix has completely collapsed, Captain. Chief Engineer Ralt says the probability field generators are beyond repair with our current resources." Vex's antennae drooped. The Astral Seeker carried representatives from 17 Galactic Alliance species, most of whom had evolved on worlds with gravity less than half of Earth standard, and atmospheres rich in methane and helium. None possessed the physical resilience or technical expertise to perform the necessary repairs in open space. "What about our passengers?" Vex asked. "Most are in hibernation to conserve oxygen," Mira replied. "Except for the human." Vex's compound eyes pulsed with surprise. "The Terran engineer? The one we picked up at Proxima Station?" "Yes, Captain. Engineer Jack." Vex had nearly forgotten about the human. The Galactic Alliance had only recently made contact with Earth, a planet classified as a Class 5 death world due to its high gravity, extreme temperature variations, toxic oxygen atmosphere, and aggressive, indigenous life. Humans were regarded with a mixture of fascination and terror. Creatures evolved in conditions that would kill most sentient species in minutes. "Bring him to the bridge," Vex ordered. Minutes later, Engineer Jack strode onto the command deck. Standing nearly twice as tall as Captain Vex, the human's dense musculature and solid frame made him appear like a living statue compared to the willowy, exoskeletal crew. His dark skin glistened with a thin layer of moisture, the strange cooling mechanism humans called sweat. "You needed me, Captain?" Jack asked, his deep voice reverberating through the bridge. Vex explained their dire situation, indicating the damaged quantum drive and the impossible repair requirements. "Our engineers estimate we need at least 3 crew members to work outside the vessel to replace the probability field generator. In these conditions, even with protection suits, our species would survive perhaps 10 minutes of exposure." Jack studied the schematics, his 5-fingered hand running through the short hair on his head. A peculiar gesture the crew had learned indicated the human was thinking. "I can fix it," he said simply. Mira's translucent skin flashed with disbelief. "Impossible! The temperatures out there range from 3 Kelvin in shadow to 273 Kelvin in direct starlight. The radiation alone would—" Jack smiled, displaying his flat, herbivore-like teeth that nonetheless sent involuntary shivers through the exoskeletal crew. "Those conditions aren't that different from a winter night in Minnesota. With a decent EVA suit, I could work out there for hours." The bridge fell silent as the alien crew stared at the human. They had heard the stories about Earth, how humans routinely survived conditions that would be fatal to most galactic species, but they had dismissed them as exaggerations. "Very well," Vex said finally. "Prepare the airlock and the repair materials. If Engineer Jack believes he can execute the repairs, we have nothing to lose by allowing the attempt." As the human left to prepare, Mira leaned toward her captain. "Do you really believe this Deathworlder can succeed where our best engineers would perish?" Vex's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "I don't know. But the stories say humans are not only physically resilient, they're remarkably adaptive problem solvers. Perhaps that's what we need right now." What none of them realized was that this would be merely the beginning of their education about humanity's true capabilities. The preparation chamber buzzed with activity as Jack donned the ship's largest EVA suit, modified hastily to accommodate his human frame. The alien crew watched with a mixture of fascination and horror as the human methodically checked each system. "The oxygen mixture is wrong," Jack noted, examining the suit's life support readout. "This is calibrated for methane breathers." Engineer Trill, his segmented body covered in iridescent scales, fluttered nervously. "We can adjust it to Earth standard, but our suits are designed for much shorter exposure periods. The power cells will drain 3 times faster with oxygen generation." Jack nodded. "That gives me about 40 minutes. Should be enough." "Enough?" Medical Officer Ziv interjected, her gelatinous form pulsing with concern. Even with the radiation, shields at maximum, you'll absorb at least 2 sieverts during that time. The human shrugged. I've worked in worse conditions near Jupiter's radiation belts. I'll take anti-rad meds before and after. The aliens exchanged glances. The casual way this creature from Earth dismissed conditions that would liquefy their internal organs was unsettling. Captain Vex entered the chamber, mandibles clicking softly. Engineer Jack, the replacement probability field generator has been prepared according to your specifications. Are you certain about this procedure? Jack secured the helmet, the faceplate illuminating his determined expression. The procedure isn't the problem, Captain. Your engineers have the right idea, but your physiology limits the execution. I just need to get out there and manually replace the burnt-out components. And you can survive this? Vex asked hesitantly. It's just vacuum, radiation, and extreme cold, Jack replied with a grin. Tuesday on Earth. The airlock cycled, and external cameras tracked Jack as he moved along the ship's hull, magnetic boots securing him to the metal surface. The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the human worked efficiently, his movements precise despite the bulky suit. Remarkable, Mira whispered. He's not even using a tether. Unnecessary weight. Jack's voice came through the comms. If I drift off, I can use the suit's thrusters to return. The damaged section came into view, a scorched recess containing the quantum drive's probability field generator. Even through the cameras, they could see the radiation distorting the visual feed. This is worse than I thought, Jack commented, examining the melted components. The containment field ruptured completely. You're lucky the whole drive didn't detonate. Can you repair it? Vex asked. Not repair, replace. I'll need to extract the damaged unit first. What followed astounded the alien crew. Jack disconnected his suit's auxiliary power supply and rigged it as a temporary radiation shield. Then, using tools designed for the delicate manipulator appendages of the ship's engineers, the human began methodically disassembling the damaged generator. 30 minutes into the EVA, alarms blared on the bridge. His suit temperature is dropping dangerously, Ziv reported. The life support system can't compensate for the heat loss in shadow. Internal temperature down to 31 degrees Celsius. Jack, your vitals are concerning, Vex transmitted. You should return immediately. Almost done, came the strained reply. Just need to calibrate the new generator and reconnect the quantum matrices. Your core temperature is approaching hypothermia for your species, Ziv insisted. Jack's laugh crackled through the comms. Doc, I grew up in northern Canada. This is sweater weather. Besides, the cold is actually helping with the radiation. Slows cellular damage. As the minutes ticked by, the alien crew watched with growing respect and concern. Jack's movements had slowed, but his work remained precise. The readouts from his suit showed radiation exposure well beyond what they considered survivable, yet the human continued methodically. Final connection complete, Jack announced. Initializing the probability field now. The ship hummed as power flowed into the new generator. Status indicators across the bridge flashed from red to green as systems came back online. It's working, Mira exclaimed, her skin flashing with excitement patterns. Of course it is, Jack replied, his voice noticeably weaker. Now, if someone could help me back in, I think I might need those anti-rad meds sooner rather than later. As the airlock cycled to retrieve their improbable savior, Captain Vex turned to his first officer. I believe we've just witnessed why humans call their homeworld Earth rather than Death World. Mira's antennae quivered. Why is that, Captain? Because to them, it's not a world of death. It's a world that prepared them for the universe's worst conditions and taught them to survive. Medical Officer Ziv hovered anxiously over Jack as he lay on the examination table. Her gelatinous form rippled with stress patterns while she analyzed the readings from the medical scanner. This is unprecedented, she murmured, translucent tendrils manipulating the holographic display. You've absorbed enough radiation to kill any of our species 3 times over, yet your cellular degradation is minimal. Jack winced as the anti-radiation medication coursed through his veins. Human physiology. Our cells can repair radiation, damage better than most species. Something about Earth's background radiation during our evolution. But the cold exposure, the oxygen deprivation, Your suit registered temperatures that should have induced severe hypothermia. I shut down blood flow to my extremities, Jack explained matter-of-factly. Redirected it to my core organs. Old, mountaineering trick. Ziv pulsed with astonishment. You can consciously control your circulatory system? Not directly, but we can trigger the response. Look, I'm fine. Just need some food and rest. Captain Vex entered the medical bay, mandibles clicking respectfully. Engineer Jack, the quantum drive is fully operational. Your repairs were successful. Good to hear, Jack replied, sitting up despite Ziv's protests. How soon can we get underway? That's what I came to discuss, Vex said. Our engineers are hesitant to activate the drive without further safety checks. They've never seen a probability field generator calibrated the way you configured it. Jack frowned. What's the issue? Vex gestured, and Chief Engineer Ralt skittered into the medical bay, his 6 insectoid legs clicking nervously on the metallic floor. Ralt's compound eyes darted between Jack and his captain before he spoke. The configuration you implemented exceeds our safety protocols by 27%, Ralt explained, mandibles trembling. The quantum efficiency readings are impossible, Jack smiled. I see the problem. I used a resonance tuning technique developed for deep space mining operations near black holes. It's not in your standard manuals. It's not just that, Ralt continued. You modified the phase variance compensators to work in parallel, rather than in sequence. Our engineers say this should cause a catastrophic probability cascade. On most systems, yes, Jack agreed. But your drive uses Heisenberg compensators based on the Alcubierre principles. If you recalibrate the quantum foam displacement to account for the parallel processing, you get a 40% efficiency boost. The 3 aliens stared at the human in silence. You understood our quantum drive technology after seeing it once? Vex finally asked. Jack shrugged, immediately regretting. The motion as pain flared through his radiation-burnt shoulders. It's not that different from the experimental drives we were developing back home. Yours is more refined, but the principles are similar. But our quantum technology was developed over 12 generations, Ralt protested. The mathematical models alone require— Look, Jack interrupted. Humans have a knack for mechanical adaptation. We've had to, living on Earth. When your environment constantly tries to kill you, you either innovate or die. Vex's antennae quivered thoughtfully. Perhaps this explains why your species advanced from primitive technology to interstellar theory in less than 500 cycles. What took other species millennia? Necessity and curiosity, Jack said simply. Now, about that drive. I promise it won't explode. In fact, you'll reach your destination in half the time with the modified configuration. After further discussion, Vex reluctantly agreed to proceed with Jack's modifications. As the quantum drive spooled up, the entire crew braced for potential disaster. Instead, the astral seeker smoothly transitioned into superluminal velocity, with none of the usual gravitational fluctuations. On the bridge, the navigation officer turned to Captain Vex in amazement. Sir, our velocity is 42% higher than our previous maximum, yet power consumption is down by 15%. Vex's compound eyes focused on the velocity readings in disbelief. How is this possible? Later, when Jack had recovered enough to join them on the bridge, he explained in terms that left most of the crew baffled but impressed. The human had essentially rewritten quantum field principles that the Galactic Alliance had considered immutable for centuries. You could revolutionize interstellar travel, Mira said, her translucent skin shimmering with excitement. Jack looked uncomfortable with the praise. I just applied some practical solutions to theoretical problems. Anyone from Earth would have done the same. I think, Vex said slowly. That statement might be the most terrifying thing I've heard today. The astral seeker cruised through the void at its newly enhanced velocity, the stars stretching into brilliant streaks beyond the observation deck. Word of Jack's improbable repair had spread throughout the ship, and the human found himself the reluctant center of attention. Is it true you performed quantum matrix calibration by hand? Asked Nav Officer Lund, his crystalline body refracting light as he approached Jack. And that you survived direct exposure to vacuum for nearly an hour? Added Communications Specialist Beck, her auditory membranes vibrating with excitement. Jack shifted uncomfortably. The suit did most of the work. But no species in the Alliance could have survived those conditions, Beck persisted. Look, Jack said. Humans aren't special. We just come from a high-gravity, radiation-soaked rock with extreme temperature variations. And aggressive predators. Evolution made us adaptable. The gathering of curious aliens grew as more crew members found excuses to visit the observation deck. Jack found their fascination both amusing and slightly annoying. On Earth, he'd been an ordinary engineer, skilled but hardly remarkable. Here, performing basic repairs made him seem like some mythical being. A sudden alarm interrupted the impromptu gathering. The deck trembled beneath them, and the brilliant streaks of stars outside abruptly reverted to distant points of light. All crew to emergency stations, Captain Vex's voice announced over the intercom. Senior officers to the bridge immediately. Jack followed the rushing crew members, arriving on the bridge just as Vex was reviewing damage reports. What happened? Jack asked. Vex's mandibles clicked rapidly, the equivalent of a human frown. We've encountered a quantum filament field. Extremely rare phenomenon. The ship automatically dropped out of superluminal velocity to prevent catastrophic disruption. Chief Engineer Ralt's appendages danced across the holographic interface. The quantum drive's probability field generator is intact, but the secondary phase inverters have been completely fried. We're dead in space until they're replaced. Do we have spares? Jack asked. Yes, but they're in the forward storage compartment, Ralt replied, which is now inaccessible due to hull deformation from the filament impact. Mira displayed the ship's schematics, highlighting a section of the forward hull that had been compressed by gravitational forces. The compression has sealed the access corridors. We'd need to cut through from the exterior. That's not possible, Vex stated flatly. The filament field left behind quantum instabilities that would be lethal to anyone in an EVA suit. The radiation and subatomic particles would penetrate any shielding we have. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank. Without the phase inverters, the quantum drive couldn't function. Without the quantum drive, they faced a journey of centuries using conventional engines. What about the emergency bulkhead on Deck 7? Jack suggested, studying the schematics. If we could access the maintenance tunnels behind it, we might be able to reach the storage compartment without going outside. Ralt's compound eyes pulsed. Those tunnels are barely 20 centimeters in diameter. They're designed for maintenance drones, not crew members. They're also flooded with coolant gas from the impact, Mira added. The mixture is toxic to most species aboard. Jack stared at the schematic, calculating. What's the composition of the gas? Primarily nitrogen trifluoride with trace elements. Of xenon, Vex replied. Fatally toxic to oxygen breathers, and nearly all methane breathers as well. Jack mused. NF3 is nasty stuff. But with the right filtration, how long would it take to vent the tunnels? At least 14 hours, Ralt answered, and we'd lose all cooling capacity to the portside energy grid. Jack made his decision. I need a breathing apparatus with a fluorine filter, some cutting tools, and a detailed map of those maintenance tunnels. The senior officers stared at him. You can't possibly be suggesting, Vex began. I can fit through. Those tunnels, Jack insisted. It'll be tight, but I can make it. Even with filtration, the gas would still be corrosive to your soft tissues, Ziv protested, having joined them on the bridge. And the radiation levels from the quantum disruption. I've worked in fluorine-rich atmospheres before, Jack countered. Mining operation on Europa. As for the radiation, I'm already taking anti-rad meds. I'll double the dose. The aliens exchanged glances that Jack had come to recognize as their equivalent of shocked disbelief. The nitrogen trifluoride concentration would blind you within minutes, Ziv insisted. Jack smiled grimly. Then I'll have to work fast, won't I? Despite further protests, Jack's plan was put into action. No viable alternatives existed, and the ship's supplies would sustain the crew for only so long without power to the hibernation systems. 2 hours. Later, Jack stood before the emergency bulkhead on Deck 7, wearing a modified breathing apparatus and carrying a pack of tools strapped to his chest. The passage ahead was barely wider than his shoulders. The filtration system will provide breathable air for approximately 30 minutes, Ralt explained, adjusting the apparatus. After that, the filters will become saturated. The maintenance Tunnel extends for 73 meters, Mira added. There are 2 junction points where you'll need to make sharp turns. Jack nodded, fitting the breathing mask over his face. If I'm not back in an hour, send a maintenance drone to retrieve. The phase inverters. They're about the size of my fist, right? Correct, Ralt confirmed. But the drones cannot manipulate the storage locks. That's why we need you. Jack, Captain Vex said solemnly, this risk is far beyond duty requirements. No one would think less of you for declining. The human checked his equipment one final time. On Earth, Captain, we have a saying. The difficult we do immediately. The impossible takes a little longer. With that, Jack entered the access panel and began his crawl through the impossibly narrow tunnel, disappearing into a cloud of faintly visible toxic gas. Jack's world narrowed to the confines of the maintenance tunnel, his shoulders scraping against the metal walls with each forward movement. The filtered breathing apparatus hissed rhythmically, the only sound besides his own heartbeat in the cramped space. His headlamp illuminated a swirling haze of nitrogen trifluoride, casting eerie shadows ahead. I've entered the main junction, he reported through the comms. Visibility is about 30 centimeters. The gas is denser than expected. Your vital signs are elevated, came Ziv's concerned voice. Heart rate 120, blood pressure 160/90. That's just from the tight squeeze, Jack assured her, wriggling forward. Nothing to worry about. In truth, he could already feel the burning in his eyes and on his exposed skin where the toxic gas made contact. The filtration system kept his lungs safe, but every other part of him was under chemical assault. The tunnel took a sharp downward turn, forcing him to contort his body painfully to navigate the bend. 20 meters in, he grunted, coming up on the first obstacle. The obstacle in question was a collapsed section of tunnel where the quantum filament had warped the ship's internal structure. The passage had narrowed to barely 15 centimeters, impossibly tight for his human frame. I can't get through, Jack reported, examining the constriction. Need to widen it. That section is part of the structural support for the coolant distribution system, Ralt warned. Cutting through it could rupture the main coolant line. Jack unhooked a compact plasma cutter from his tool belt. I'll be careful. With painstaking precision, he began cutting along the edge of the collapsed section, making just enough space for his body to squeeze through. The superheated metal reacted with the nitrogen trifluoride, creating pockets of combustion that flared, dangerously close to his face. Jack, we're reading temperature spikes, Mira's voice crackled with static. The gas is becoming unstable. Understood, he replied tersely. Almost through. With a final cut, he created an opening barely large enough. Drawing a deep breath, Jack forced his body through the gap, feeling his skin tear against the hot metal. Pain lanced through his side, but he kept moving. I'm past the collapse, he reported, his voice strained. Continuing to the storage section. The next 40 meters were a blur of pain and determination. The toxic gas had begun to affect his vision, turning the world into a hazy, tear-filled panorama. His exposed skin felt like it was on fire, and breathing had become laborious as the filters approached saturation. Vital signs critical, Ziv's alarmed voice announced. Blood oxygen dropping to 90%, heart rate 160. You must turn back. Too far. To turn back now, Jack gasped. Almost there. The tunnel finally opened into a small junction box, where he could briefly rise to his hands and knees. His relief was short-lived as the radiation detector on his wrist began to wail. Warning, radiation levels exceeding safety parameters, came the automated alert. I'm at the access panel to the storage compartment, Jack informed the bridge. Radiation is spiking. Looks like the quantum disruption affected this section heavily. The phase inverters are in storage locker 12, Ralt instructed. If the radiation is too intense, it's fine, Jack interrupted, already working on the access panel. Just need to override the security lock. His fingers, blistering from chemical exposure, fumbled with the delicate circuitry. The world swam before his eyes as the combination of radiation, toxic gas, and oxygen deprivation took its toll. Using techniques that would have horrified the ship's engineers, Jack bypassed the security system and forced the panel open. The storage compartment beyond was a hellscape of radiation and swirling toxic gas. His detector screamed warnings as he crawled inside, scanning the numbered lockers for number 12. Found it, he announced hoarsely. Opening now. The locker required a biometric scan from an authorized crew member, a security measure Jack hadn't anticipated. For a moment, he considered cutting through the locker, but that risked damaging the delicate phase inverters inside. Instead, he pulled out a small device he'd assembled before the mission. A jury-rigged biometric simulator programmed with Ralt's signature, created from the engineer's activity logs on the ship's systems. "You never mentioned this was biometrically sealed," Jack commented, applying the device to the scanner. There was a pause before Ralt responded. "You created a biometric simulator? In 2 hours?" "Like I said," Jack wheezed, watching the device work, "humans are adaptable." The locker hissed open, revealing 3 gleaming phase inverters nestled in protective casing. Jack carefully secured them in his pack. "Got them," he reported. Beginning return journey. The trip back was a nightmare of failing consciousness and sheer willpower. Jack's breathing apparatus signaled filter saturation halfway through, forcing him to take shallow breaths of the increasingly contaminated air. His vision tunneled dangerously as he dragged himself through the collapsed section, fresh blood mixing with the chemical burns on his skin. Consciousness was fading fast when he finally saw the light of the access hatch ahead. With one final surge of effort, Jack pushed the phase inverters through the opening before his body gave out. The last thing he heard was the hiss of the decontamination spray and Ziv's urgent voice ordering a medical team to the bulkhead. Then, darkness claimed him. Hours later, Jack awoke in the medical bay, his body covered in regenerative gel and an oxygen mask secured over his face. Captain Vex stood nearby, mandibles working thoughtfully. "The phase inverters?" Jack croaked. "Successfully installed," Vex confirmed. "We'll reach the nearest Galactic Alliance outpost in 3 days." Jack nodded weakly, relieved. "What you did," Vex began, struggling to find words. "Our medical officer says you should have died at least 4 different ways. The radiation alone—" "Just doing my job, Captain," Jack murmured. Vex's compound eyes studied the human with newfound respect. "No, Engineer Jack. You've done something far more significant. You've taught us that what we thought were the boundaries of possible survival were merely the comfortable limitations of our own evolution." As Jack drifted back to sleep, he failed to notice the data recorder Vex placed beside his bed, a device that would eventually transmit the full account of the human's impossible feats to the Galactic Alliance headquarters, forever changing how the galaxy viewed the Deathworlders from Earth. 3 days after the tunnel incident, the Astral Seeker docked at Meridian Station, a massive ring-shaped outpost teeming with representatives from across the Galactic Alliance. Jack stood at the viewport, watching the docking clamps secure the yacht's vessel, his body still healing beneath the medical nanofabric covering his burns. "Quite a welcome committee," Mira observed, joining him at the window. Below, a delegation of station officials had gathered in the arrival bay, their diverse physiologies representing at least a dozen different species. Jack frowned. "Why so many? This is just a routine supply stop, isn't it?" Mira's skin flickered, with amusement patterns. "Perhaps on human vessels, but the Astral Seeker was reported missing after the quantum drive failure. Our sudden reappearance, with drastically improved performance metrics, has caused quite a stir. And I'm guessing Captain Vex reported what happened?" "It is standard procedure to log all significant incidents," Mira replied diplomatically. Jack sighed. He'd hoped to complete his journey to the research outpost on Tau Ceti without fanfare. The attention made him uncomfortable. On Earth, he'd been just one of thousands of deep space engineers, not some interstellar celebrity. "The Galactic Science Council has requested your presence at their emergency session," Mira continued. "They're particularly interested in your quantum drive modifications." "The modifications aren't that revolutionary," Jack protested. "Any decent engineer could have figured it out with enough time." Mira's translucent form rippled with what Jack had come to recognize as the alien equivalent of laughter. "You fundamentally altered quantum field theory that has remained unchanged for 12 generations. Revolutionary might be an understatement." Before Jack could respond, Captain Vex approached, accompanied by a towering, serpentine alien wearing the insignia of Meridian Station's administrator. "Engineer Jack," Vex began formally. "Allow me to introduce High Administrator Thex of Meridian Station." He has specifically requested to meet you. The serpentine alien's vertical pupils dilated as they fixed on Jack. So, this is the Deathworlder who performed quantum recalibration in open space and traversed a toxic maintenance tunnel that would kill any rational being. The administrator's forked tongue flicked out, testing the air. Smaller than I expected. Jack extended his hand, then awkwardly withdrew it when he remembered most Alliance species found physical contact distasteful. Just doing my job, Administrator. Your job. Thex's scales rippled with interest. Captain Vex informs me that you modified our established quantum field equations and improved drive efficiency by 42%. Is this your standard occupational performance? Jack shrugged. I saw a problem and fixed it. The rest was just applied physics. Thex exchanged glances with Vex. Fascinating. The casualness with which your species approaches what we consider insurmountable challenges is concerning. What the Administrator means, Vex interjected diplomatically, is that your achievements have attracted considerable attention. The Science Council believes your insights could advance Alliance technology by decades. I'm happy to share what I know, Jack offered. Earth has been developing similar theories for years. This statement caused visible ripples of discomfort among the gathered aliens. Thex's scales flattened against his body, a sign of alarm that Jack had learned to recognize. You mean to say, Thex hissed softly, that such knowledge is common on your homeworld? Jack considered this. Not common, exactly. But our theoretical physicists have been working on quantum probability field manipulation since before we achieved interstellar flight. It's a natural progression from our understanding of quantum mechanics. The silence that followed was profound. Jack realized he'd said something significant, but couldn't determine what had caused such consternation. Mira leaned closer, her voice barely audible. The Alliance discovered probability field manipulation only after 3 millennia of interstellar travel. You're suggesting humans developed the theory before even leaving your solar system? Well, yeah, Jack confirmed. We had to understand the principles before we could build the drives. Administrator Thex composed himself with visible effort. Engineer Jack, I believe the Science Council will have many questions for you. But first, there is the matter of your medical treatment. Our physicians are concerned about your radiation exposure and chemical burns. I'm healing fine, Jack assured him, touching the nanofabric covering his still raw skin. Your medical officer did an excellent job. Nevertheless, Thex insisted, our medical facilities are considerably more advanced than shipboard capabilities. A full cellular regeneration treatment would be advisable. Jack recognized the administrator's ulterior motive. They wanted to study him as much as treat him. Still, his burns were painful, and proper treatment would speed his recovery. All right, he agreed. Lead the way. The station's medical facility was a marvel of biotechnology. Gelatinous medical officers similar to Ziv, but with more specialized adaptations, hovered around Jack as he underwent a detailed scan. Their translucent bodies pulsed with color patterns as they communicated their findings to each other. The lead physician, whose name translated roughly as healer, addressed Jack after reviewing the results. Your cellular damage is extensive, yet your body has already begun repairs at a rate we typically observe only in regenerative species. Human healing, Jack explained. We evolved on a high-radiation planet with lots of predators. Quick healing was a survival advantage. You've also metabolized the anti-radiation medication at 4 times the expected rate, Healer continued. And your cellular mitochondria show unusual radiation resistance. Jack shrugged. Earth has a strong magnetic field, but it doesn't block all cosmic radiation. We evolved some resistance. As the treatment proceeded, Jack became aware of more aliens observing from behind a translucent barrier. Officials in Science Council uniforms, studying him with undisguised fascination. The attention made him increasingly uncomfortable. Is there a problem? He finally asked Healer. The gelatinous physician pulsed apologetically. Forgive the intrusion. You are the first human many of us have encountered directly. Your species' resilience has become something of scientific interest. You mean they think I'm a freak? Jack translated bluntly. Not at all, Healer assured him, rippling with distress. The Council merely wishes to understand how humans have adapted to survive conditions that would be fatal to most sentient species. Jack sighed. We're not special. We just come from a challenging planet. A challenging planet that would kill 98% of known sentient species within minutes of exposure, Healer pointed out. Your casual dismissal of extremes that we consider lethal is precisely what fascinates us. As the regeneration treatment concluded, Jack realized his journey had become far more complicated than a simple engineering assignment. He had inadvertently become Earth's ambassador to a galaxy that viewed humans with equal parts fear and fascination. The Galactic Science Council chamber fell silent as Jack finished his presentation. The semicircular hall, designed to accommodate beings from across the Alliance, was filled to capacity with representatives who had traveled specifically to hear the human engineer explain his quantum drive modifications. Jack stood awkwardly before the holographic display, acutely aware of the hundreds of alien eyes, optical clusters, and sensory organs fixed upon him. The quantum equations he'd just explained, simple extensions of theories developed on Earth, had apparently upended centuries of established Alliance physics. Council chair being Zorl, a crystalline entity who communicated through modulated light patterns, pulsed with intense blue-violet frequencies that the translator rendered as astonishment. Engineer Jack, the translation echoed through the chamber. You present these advancements as minor improvements, yet our greatest minds require significant study to even comprehend their implications. How is it possible that a species so new to interstellar travel has surpassed our understanding in this field? Jack shifted uncomfortably. With respect, chair being Zorl, humans haven't surpassed anything. We simply approached the problem from a different perspective. Earth's high gravity and dense atmosphere required us to develop more efficient propulsion systems early in our technological development. A representative from the methane-breathing Vort collective burbled through their speech apparatus. But the application of quantum uncertainty principles to macro-scale engineering was considered theoretically impossible until less than a century ago. Your modification suggests it was standard knowledge on Earth. Not standard, Jack clarified. But our theoretical physicists had proposed similar models decades before we achieved practical implementation. The chamber erupted in multi-species discussion, a cacophony of clicks, whistles, light pulses, and pheromone releases that the environmental system struggled to process. Jack stood patiently, waiting for order to be restored. Administrator Thex, who had taken a seat near the front of the chamber, rose to address the council. Perhaps we should consider the broader implications. Engineer Jack's achievements, while remarkable, represent only one human's capabilities. The reports from the Astral Seeker suggest that his species routinely survives conditions we consider universally lethal. That's an exaggeration, Jack interjected. Earth is challenging, but not impossible for other life forms. Is it? Thex countered. Your homeworld features gravity nearly twice galactic standard, an oxygen-rich atmosphere toxic to most intelligent species, temperature variations exceeding survival parameters for 87% of Alliance members, and background radiation, levels that require constant cellular repair. Jack had no response to this clinical assessment of his homeworld. And yet, Thex continued, humans consider these conditions not merely survivable, but comfortable. You refer to the vacuum of space as merely cold, radiation exposure as a minor inconvenience, and toxic gas immersion as something to be endured rather than avoided at all costs. Captain Vex, who had been invited to the session as a witness, stepped forward. If I may, Council. During our journey, Engineer Jack not only survived conditions that should have been fatal, but he applied creative solutions that none of our species would have considered viable. When faced with toxic gas, he didn't seek to eliminate it. He simply filtered it enough to survive. When confronted with radiation, he accepted exposure levels we consider instantly lethal and relied on his body's natural repair mechanisms. Chair being Zorl pulsed thoughtfully. What are you suggesting, Captain? That humans represent more than just an engineering curiosity, Vex replied. They are a species evolved in conditions that forge a unique perspective, one that sees insurmountable obstacles as mere inconveniences to be overcome. A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. Jack realized the implications of what was being said. Humans were being portrayed as almost superhumanly tough and innovative, a potential threat, as much as an asset. I think you're missing something important, Jack said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. Yes, humans can survive in harsh conditions. Yes, we've developed some theoretical models your scientists hadn't considered. But that doesn't make us superior, just different. He gestured to the diverse assembly. The Neri can perceive quantum states directly. The Vort can process complex chemical information instantly. The Kel have perfect memory recall across generations. Every species here has remarkable adaptations that humans lack. Jack stepped away from the display and spoke with conviction. What makes the Galactic Alliance work isn't that you're all the same. It's that each species contributes unique strengths. Humans are tough and adaptable, sure, but we need the Alliance's collective knowledge just as much as you might benefit from our perspective. The chamber fell silent as his words were translated across all communication channels. Then, slowly, indicators of agreement began to appear. Light pulses, pheromone releases, vibrational patterns. Chair being Zoral glowed with a warm amber frequency. Well-reasoned, Engineer Jack. Perhaps the most valuable human trait is not your physical resilience, but your capacity for cooperation and mutual respect. That's definitely one of our better qualities, Jack agreed with a smile. The remainder of the council session focused on practical applications of Jack's modifications, with representatives from various scientific disciplines proposing collaborative research initiatives. By the time the meeting concluded, the initial fear had transformed into cautious enthusiasm about humanity's potential contributions to the Alliance. As Jack exited the chamber, he found the crew of the Astral Seeker waiting for him. Captain Vex approached, mandibles clicking in their species' version of approval. An impressive performance, Vex commented. You've done your homeworld a great service today. Jack shrugged. I just didn't want them thinking humans are some kind of unstoppable space monsters. Aren't you, though? Mira asked, her translucent skin shimmering with amusement patterns. You survived vacuum, radiation, toxic gas, and worst of all, a council hearing. The council wasn't so bad, Jack replied with a grin. Medical Officer Ziv joined them, her gelatinous form pulsing with excitement. The medical exchange has already begun. 3 research institutions have requested my notes on human cellular regeneration. Your recovery rate is remarkable even by Alliance standards for regenerative species. Glad some good came out of it, Jack said, touching the newly healed skin, where his burns had been just days earlier. Chief Engineer Ralt skittered forward. The Engineering Guild has officially renamed your quantum field modification. It's now called the Terran Uncertainty Manipulation Principle. Congratulations. Few get their names in the technical manuals. Actually, Jack corrected, the principle should be named after Dr. Kim, who first proposed it back on Earth. Just applied it. Always deflecting credit, Captain Vex observed, another curious human trait. As they made their way to the station's observational ring, Jack noticed how other aliens watched him pass. Not with fear or suspicion now, but with interest and curiosity. Something had changed. Standing before the vast viewport, Earth's sun, a distant point of light among countless others, Jack reflected on the unexpected turn his routine engineering assignment had taken. What will you do now? Captain Vex asked, joining him at the viewport. The Council has offered you a permanent advisory position. Few receive such an honor. Jack considered the offer. I'm still just an engineer, Captain. I'd rather be solving practical problems than sitting in meetings explaining why humans can hold our breath longer than expected. I suspected as much, Vex replied, mandibles clicking with amusement. Which is why I've proposed an alternative. The Astral Seeker will be undertaking a deep space exploratory mission to regions beyond the Alliance's current charts. We could use someone with your perspective. Exploring uncharted space? Jack grinned. Now that sounds interesting. Fair warning, Vex added, compound eyes glinting. The mission profile includes 17 Class 4 and 5 Class 5 planetary systems. Conditions that most Alliance species consider extremely hazardous, or worse. Jack laughed. So basically a walk in the park for a Deathworlder? Precisely why we need you, Vex confirmed. The Astral Seeker leaves in 3 days. As the alien captain left him to consider the offer, Jack gazed out at the stars. Humanity had only just begun its journey into the galactic community, with so much to learn and share. But perhaps their greatest contribution wasn't advanced physics or engineering techniques. Perhaps it was simply showing the galaxy that impossible was often just a matter of perspective. 3 days later, the Astral Seeker departed Meridian, station with its human engineer aboard. Bound for stars no Alliance ship had yet reached. The Council's official mission log noted one final observation from Captain Vex. With the addition of our Terran crew member, we have reclassified 73 previously unsurvivable planetary conditions as merely challenging. The galaxy just became a much larger place. The end.